Hi, everybody. Welcome to Salted Hash. My name is Steve Reagan. I'm the senior staff writer at CSO Online. With me, as always, is Famita Rashid. She is my cohort partner in crime. And behind the camera, and you can't really see him, wave for the crowd here, Chris. Say hi.
Hi, how's it going?
This is our in-studio support and one of our friends of the show. This is the first introductory episode of Salted Hash. It's named after the blog that Famita and I run. So today we're going to be talking about Kaspersky, the U.S. Cyber Command, ransomware, and a few other goodies. So stay tuned and we'll be right back. Welcome back. All right. So, Famita, how are you? What's the weather like up there?
It's gorgeous. Hey, we're like getting the last bit of the summer. It's wonderful.
Nice.
I don't know what you're seeing out there, but this is great here.
So right now, honestly, what I'm seeing for the first time is the new studio that they made here in the offices. Famita and I, for those of you not familiar, we work remotely and we travel a lot for our jobs, but occasionally we have to come back to the home base and
the mothership.
Yeah, the mothership. And here in the home base, they built this really cool studio for us. So this is the first time I'm actually getting to use it, which is nice. Otherwise, Chris just stays in here all day and plays CrowdStrike and other things like that.
Hey, maybe.
I mean, why you have all this wonderful gear? If you're not abusing it, I'm disappointed, son. So let's dive into it. We've got an interesting story you wrote recently about Kaspersky. And for those of you not familiar, I'm going to let Famita give you a little bit of the background, and then she's going to share her opinions on this because they're fantastic. So I'll leave it to you. Take it away.
So Kaspersky Lab, it's a Russian-based company. It's a traditional antivirus, but they've done a lot of really amazing stuff to kind of get past the normal signature AV that we all know about from the 80s and 90s. They do a lot of next-gen stuff. They do a lot of research. They've been, I would say, a staple of our security industry for the last decade, 20 years or so. And recently, there's been a lot of articles in reputable publications all talking about how the government's leaders and intelligence agents say, hey, Kaspersky should not be trusted. They would never use Kaspersky AV. And we're all sitting here like, all right, you're the U.S. government. You probably know something. What is it? Nope, nothing. Yet this whisper campaign keeps going on. It's driving me crazy because it's like, hello, why are you telling us that a security company can't be trusted and not tell us why? The entire point of security is we know the fact, we defend. How can we defend if we don't know what to defend against? I mean, that just doesn't make any sense to me. And these articles keep coming. You have the FBI, you have the Congress having a committee meeting and asking the NSA, DOD, and a lot of these other acronyms I'd never even heard of, saying, nope, don't use it. Nope, we don't trust them. No, we think it's backdoored. And I'm sitting here thinking, okay, first of all, I'm a junkie. I like conspiracy. What's going on? I want the story. There's nothing. Nada. And it's just really irritating because you know what? I don't know about you, Steve. I left high school years ago. I left the entire thing of, did you hear what so-and-so did years ago? I never had patience then. I don't have patience for it now. And it drives me crazy that we're telling enterprises, we're telling consumers, yeah, the government doesn't trust it, but we're not going to tell you why because what are the rest of us supposed to do? Are we supposed to say, yeah, okay, well, this is a great technology. It works. It's one of the better tools out there. You check any of the reviews. It works well, but you're telling me I shouldn't, but you won't tell me why. Even my 5-year-old doesn't accept that. So it just makes no sense. Give me the proof or stop it.
Your 5-year-old walked into the room and said, PCAPS, GTFO. The interesting thing about this story, I think, that stood out to me was the fact that they're making all of these claims that Kaspersky can't be trusted and there's a problem with the provenance of the company itself, like, where Eugene's origins and everything like this. But yet all they're doing is, like you said, they're just kind of putting it out there. I don't know if you saw the story or not from Cyberscoop. Did you check that out? They put it up to where a bunch of spies, other intelligence people are saying the FBI is actually blowing the investigation by having all of these meetings. Like they're ruining things, which leads me to think that the FBI is giving these briefings, but there really is nothing more to go on than a bunch of he said, she said stuff.
Yeah.
But because Russia is today's boogeyman of the week, ooh, scary Russia, it's very possible that that's what's fueling everything. And
I mean, I get the impression in a way that the intelligence agencies also didn't give the FBI details. So the FBI is basically floundering, trying to find information, responding to very vague things. So in a way, I feel sorry for the FBI, but then I also don't feel sorry for them because they really are making this into a really bad situation for everyone.
Well, what I think is funny is I had an executive reach out to me, very close contact, somebody I've known for years, and they're like, what do you make of this situation? You know, should we dump Kaspersky? Because they use a vendor where Kaspersky's engine is OEM'd, meaning that STK is actually a part of the product they're using. And I'm like, is Russia a part of your threat model? No. Then what do you care?
Exactly.
I mean, it really has no value to you to sweat every little news item that comes out from the boogeyman of the week. I mean, if Russia's a part of your threat model,
the news item that paid our job. But
yeah, well, no, you should definitely read everything we write. I mean, I too enjoy paying my bills. What I'm saying is, if Russia's not a part of your threat model, you shouldn't panic every time Russia does something. Yeah, you really have to weigh all your facts. And I'm surprised a lot of people have immediately jumped the gun and started, rushing with their pitchforks and torches to slay Kaspersky and get them out of the network, when what's really comical is a lot of people don't have direct Kaspersky contracts, first of all. And second of all, a lot of them aren't aware of the OEM reach Kaspersky has. So, the fact that they're using a given vendor, and I'm refraining from naming the OEM vendors because I don't want to throw anybody under a bus, but they're companies everybody knows. And depending on your setup, you probably have a Kaspersky SDK somewhere on your environment and you don't realize it yet. And how many of those organizations were approached by the FBI and they flat out just told them no because we don't have Kaspersky? Right. And this, my other issue goes back to your original point. They're talking a lot of game, but they're not giving us any kind of proof. Not even hint that we have proof. All they're saying is, Eugene once had a thing with the KGB. Congratulations. So did a lot of other men in his generation. That's pretty much how you got your education back then. Exactly. There was not a thing going on. So,
and it just really worries me because what kind of a precedent, what kind of a message are we sending? Hey, if you don't like American government policy, don't do business with American companies. I mean, we're going to destroy our own economy. If this is the precedent we're going to set.
Yeah, there's that potential blowback. I mean, it's kind of like calling the kettle calling the pot black. I mean, we've got this pot calling the kettle black, whatever that saying is. we have this, this thing to where we're slamming Kaspersky for their alleged ties to the government. How many American companies are not only tied directly either via past employment and things like this to the U.S. government, actually received funding from the government?
Yeah, I mean, DARPA is one of the best sources for security research. So
what about In-Q-Tel?
Oh, exactly.
And I mean, yeah, there's that huge firewall and disconnect between In-Q-Tel and the CIA, but we can't ignore the fact that In-Q-Tel really is, an incubator. I mean, there's a reason they exist. So yeah, most definitely we're really trying to bite the hand that feeds us here in some cases. It makes no sense. Yeah. So moving forward, we've got the U.S. Cyber Command, and that's actually some really good news for them. Here recently, President Trump signed an executive order that elevated the U.S. Cyber Command to a unified combat command or combatant command. And essentially what that is that put them on the same level out from underneath the NSA's shadow. So put them on the same level as SOC or the Special Operations Command. So it's moving them higher up the hierarchy in the Pentagon, which is a really good thing. But yet they're still underneath the NSA. So I think that's a kind of a problem. One thing President Trump did not do was define a definite split between the Cyber Command and the NSA. And he said actually what he was going to do is let General Mattis figure that out. And hopefully Mattis does see the value in splitting them off. So my question to you, and why I'm bringing this up as a topic, I want to hear your thoughts on that. The U.S. Cyber Command's been around since 2009, and they've been underneath the NSA. So they've pretty much gotten their marching orders from the NSA, which is primary goal is just data collection. So now that we know they're getting elevated a little bit here, where do you think the Cyber Command should go from this point forward?
Oh, wow. This is like getting a blank check, right?
Yep.
What do I want to do with it? I mean, I feel like in a way, NSA's always been a little bit more offensive, getting more, their authority is being able to be creative and sneaky about things that we don't even think about, know about. Cyber Command really needs to be getting to the point where they're not worrying about the stealthy, they're not worrying about the sneak attacks. They should be the first line of defense. They should be the ones that really putting together the missions on, okay, this is how we are defending, this is how we fight cyber war. So it's not, I guess the difference really here is sort of like, all right, I want the NSA to be the Marine. They do the special recon. Mm-hmm. No, the SEAL. I want them to be the Navy SEAL. They do the scary stuff, and the Navy, they do the basic mission. That's how I see Cyber Command. I want them to be the cyber arm of the military, and let the NSA do the very special mission, very targeted attack, because that's what they're good at.
So put it
their
another way,
mission should always be different.
So to put it another way, you want the Cyber Command to be like the warring little cousin of the NSA.
Totally.
They have access to all the toys and goodies that they need to, but when it comes to actually making hits, that's the Cyber Command. It's no longer, the NSA. That put them back in the relegation of collecting information for possible use. It makes sense. I actually agree with you on that. It makes a lot of sense for me to see the Cyber Command take a more proactive role in defense as well. But I think my big concern is there are a lot of specialties and talents that I don't think the government has actually filled within the Cyber Command. I don't know the specifics of their operation, but I can tell you that it takes a lot of effort to run a combatant group, and it takes a lot of skill, and it takes a lot of time and funding and resources. And I don't know if Cyber Command actually has that. The new defense budget includes them. That's part of the reason the executive order was signed, is so the Cyber Command gets better funding and more resource allotment. So not only just, tech and gadgetry, but also humans to actually come in and do things.
Yeah.
And I often wonder, is that going to be enough? Because we have this horrible problem with IT and security. Is the fact that the threats that we see today are probably going to be gone tomorrow, or even more advanced. And it takes a lot of effort to keep up in that rat race. I was reading a story, and there was an interesting quote here from Bill Leiter, who's a retired Navy Rear Admiral. And he says, the Army's cyber protection brigades are broadly focused across the Army as a cyber defense response force. And you hear them talk about how they're going to integrate cyber capabilities at brigade level as fast as they can as part of their cross-domain battle concept. I'd say the other services are probably a little bit further behind there, and they're still very much focused on network defense as opposed to looking for things happening within a wing or a carrier battle group. And that actually speaks to the point that we were making, is the fact that there needs to be a clear definition of what Cyber Command is going to be doing and how they're going to be doing it.
Yeah.
And I often wonder, here recently you heard about the shipwreck. I think it was the USS McCain.
Yeah.
So immediately after that happened, people were like, "Oh, cyber." Well, no, not necessarily. And in fact, while technically possible, there's absolutely no evidence. And then a Pentagon official made a statement that they're going to include cyber as part of their investigation, which they absolutely should. There's no reason to rule it out. But, just because it's a part of an investigation package doesn't mean that's the only thing we're staring at. And it turns out they don't think cyber was involved in that at all.
I think you said something along the lines of just because a computer, something had a computer doesn't make it a cyber attack. And I agree with you. Exactly. We tend to jump immediately to everything being a cyber attack. And I think just because it's part of an investigation doesn't mean it automatically is. It just means that this is the reality. We can't rule it out. Every investigation now has to consider a physical as well as a cyber component.
Yep. And I really wish we can convince some of our peers to take that notion, is the fact that just because there's a computer inside does not mean, some spooky, scary hacker has come out of the woodwork to take it apart on you. Yeah. But yeah, that's to where they jump. So I think in the next year or so, we're going to see where Cyber Command goes. I think the decision's still too new. I don't think there's going to be a thing to where they're going to make changes overnight, but I would very much hope that they give them a more active role. In
a way, I feel like we're behind. Germany's got a whole cyber command unit. Most of the Western European countries, they have already done this. So it's a little startling that we are finally giving U.S. Cyber Command the authority it needs to be
deserves. I guess. Exactly. I think that would be the even better way to put it, is the respect it deserves. We treated him like a little kid cousin forever. Now we're trying to say, okay, now you could sit at the adult table. Well, that's fine and dandy, but where's the plate, the silverware, and everything else? Why are you letting him sit at the table if you're not going to feed him? You just can't. So we'll move on to that. We'll rant about Cyber Command all day long if we wanted to. We'll move forward. Let's talk about a topic you thought of, something near and dear to your heart: entertainment hacking. And so when we were in the studio doing a little prep earlier, Chris and I were talking about this segment, and the interesting thing about it is the fact that when the Sony attack happened in 2014, that got everybody's attention. Like, a major Hollywood studio's been hit.
Yeah. Alec Baldwin was the closing keynote at RSA conference because of that. People started paying attention.
And it's very interesting because Hollywood's done hacking wrong, but done hacking for years. You've always seen, the interesting things in the movies, to where, we've got 50 billion people and we're typing on the same keyboard.
Don't forget, the malicious code is always red and the safe code is green.
Yes, safe code is green, mal code is red. That is correct. And also, anybody with a Mac can infect an alien spaceship and, save the planet. The thing that really gets me, though, is it's been around forever, and they've always had this mindset of, it's not us. We do things differently. And then Sony happened. The world melted. Hollywood burst into flames. And you were talking earlier about high school drama. Boy, were those emails drama filled. It was just, it was the best of high school and junior high rolled into one. And then fast forward a couple years, Sony is still out there. It's still like a very livid reminder. And then HBO got a visit, an unwanted visit. And so I guess my first thoughts, for those of you that don't know this story, HBO got late July, got the news that somebody had hacked them, and part of the attack, and like 1.5 terabytes worth of data, which is right around Sony level. Some will say it's more, some will say it's less, but you've got to consider what's been taken and where is the Game of Thrones scripts.
First email versus actual episode. There's a different cost associated with that amount.
So actually, and that's the thing, prior to HBO, if you remember, Netflix got hit.
Yeah.
And they were being held for ransom, pay us this money or we're releasing Orange is the New Black. Rightfully, Netflix, told the attackers, go hang yourself. And boom, Orange is the New Black is being leaked before it's released. And, Netflix wasn't even mad. They were like, whatever, we're still not going to pay you. In fact, we're going to release the entire series early now. Have fun. And they just let it all go. And I think that was the right approach, because a lot of loyalists to the show, they refused to go get those, those files. And likewise, with the shooting script for Game of Thrones, most people didn't download it and read it. A lot of the hardcore fans were like, I'm not going to ruin the rest of the series for myself. What am I going to do with the next 3 weeks of my life? Sunday is
You try to tell anyone, everyone's gonna shout you down. Spoiler! Don't tell me.
Yeah,
so
right. I mean, you walk in and you try to give a spoiler about Game of Thrones, somebody's liable to club you. So, Chris had an interesting question. I'm gonna let him ask it, and then we'll discuss it. So, we were talking about the Sony into Netflix.
So this is what I don't get. If this has happened before to other big media companies and companies in general, you'd think that HBO would, put their guard up or try to, better their security, but I guess it doesn't seem to be the case.
So when attacks in your vertical happen, a lot of people still have this mentality of it won't happen to me.
Or it won't happen again.
Or it won't happen again. Because what's the old saying? Lightning never strikes twice, right? So what happened is everybody looked at what happened with Sony and how that I mean, that hack was dissected. Everybody knows, the outcome of Sony, and they have a good idea of how the attackers got in and what was going on and everything like this. So they looked at their defenses and they asked their security teams, are we the next Sony? And the security teams rightfully said, no, we're not. They shored up their defenses and relied on what they already had. But then Netflix happened, and it was a completely different attack vector. See, Sony didn't have to deal with supply chain problems. Netflix got hacked because a contractor got popped. It wasn't Netflix directly. So while Netflix looked at Sony probably and said, hey, are we next? Their IT people and their security people rightfully told them, no, we're not. And that was true. And now you have HBO. HBO gets popped directly according to the attackers, depending on how you want to buy into their stuff. And so technically HBO is more closely related to Sony than they are Netflix. But HBO also had a supply chain problem because of the España leak. You remember right after I keep staring at the monitor to look at you because it's a much bigger picture instead of staring directly at your camera. The funny thing is, you remember after all the scripts and the emails and everything like that, the actual episode leaked, but not because of a hacker. It leaked because of a contractor accidentally uploading it ahead of time.
Yeah, they're just mishandling the content properly.
So to answer your question, and tell me if this is a good enough answer for you, they do consider the other attacks, but they really don't see themselves as potential victims if they can defend against what they know about the previous attack. They're not looking at the other avenues, the other attack paths. They say, that car hit a wall. Well, I don't have a wall, so I'm good.
Yeah. The other point here, Chris, is there was an interview with the Daily Beast where I think one of the actors, I don't follow the show. I'm probably the only person that doesn't watch Game of Thrones, so I don't know which actor it was.
Jamie Lannister, the guy that plays Jamie Lannister. Yeah.
There you go. But he was talking about how with HBO, they had to recreate new email addresses. They had to do two-factor authentication. So it's clear that HBO did learn from Sony's attack, and they beefed up security. They actually made sure that the email was a secure vector, and they made their employees really stick to the policy and not bend it just because you're an expensive actor. Just being like, no, this is how you have to do it.
Yep.
So in that case, HBO did it right. It's just as Steve said, they secured the front door. They just didn't realize that the attackers can walk in any other way. And that's actually the big problem with the industry. They look at the attacks in the vector. They start thinking, oh, we don't want to be next. But they're not used to thinking like robbers. They're not used to thinking about what are the gazillion other ways that they might come in. They're used to it in terms of crazy fans coming on the set physically, but they're not used to doing that in the cyber sense yet. I hate using the word cyber, but they're not used to think about it in terms of what online methods people can do.
Let's look at it from a... Go ahead.
I think at this point, especially with the entertainment industry, I feel like everything's going to be hard copy now. Like if you think about it, what was that actor's name? The Lannister guy.
I forget his name.
Yeah, I forget his name. Which is sad because it's one of my favorite shows.
I love the show, but
it's one of my favorite shows.
I can't tell you his name.
But yeah, he said that all the scripts, some of the scripts, not all of them, but some of them got leaked. And he said now they get all the scripts hard copy.
Yeah.
which makes sense because
It's the way, and some will argue that's the way it should have been. You know, it should have been like that the entire time. But you have to consider feasibility, and you have to consider, you know, overhead. Game of Thrones is a very expensive show to put on. So if I can save, you know, a few $1,000s a week by putting your script and your shooting schedule on the cloud versus having it printed out, couriered, and hand delivered to you, I'm going to lean towards saving that money. But yet at the same time, that is an attack surface that they kind of were aware of, but they're not giving it a lot of assessment. They're not putting a lot of stock into it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's put it in terms of production. This will really resonate with you. Right now, you're recording this as we're filming and you're getting things ready, right? So to protect your stuff, you have backups going and things like this, right? So what happens if I walk over and just unplug that machine right there? Would you lose all your work you've just done right now?
possibly, yeah.
Yeah. But is that a consideration? You have the backups, you have the drives there that are protecting you. You've got the cards and the camera that's, you know, you've got things running on. Those are all practical failures and hard points that you can see where you'd lose your work, right? But while that's a valid hard point, you're not expecting me to get up and go unplug that machine, which would equally be just as catastrophic.
Definitely not. We'd have some problems right now.
But you see my point, though. I mean,
right.
That's,
yeah, totally.
That's the way a lot of teams look at it. They look at what's very real, what's here and now and in your face. And yeah, they know that if somebody unplugged that system, it's going to be a problem, but nobody's going to go unplug that system. And that's exactly the mantra they live by until somebody gets up to go unplug that system. And then suddenly, you know, all of us come out of the woodwork going, why didn't you protect the plug? Plug Protector 4000 could have saved you, you know, and you go on and you go on. And that's the circle we live in. Yeah. So, yeah.
You know, I'm going to register Plug Protector 4000 now. I'm going to find out if there's a domain for it.
That, you know what? We should do that. We could just
Plug Protector.
And then every time somebody visit it, we redirect them to the Salted Hash videos because, you know, that'll be our standard go-to for like product placement from now on. Plug Protector 4000. Protect your plugs. But no, I mean, kind of fading out on that topic. I mean, it was one of those things to where the entertainment industry is like any other industry. They're valid targets. You know, it just so happens because they're the entertainment industry, I think there's a lot more drama around it, so that generates a lot more news. Yeah, it's kind of a droll day when you talk about a financial institution got hacked. Oh, look, more stolen credit cards. Yeah. Now I'm going to have to, you know, fill out a paper and wait for my new card to show up in the mail, and I'm going to have to make a phone call and activate it. And then versus... She said, what about her principal director of photography? Ooh, that's horrible. Let's talk about
Well,
that.
not only that, we need to know what the next episode
we're also now getting a better idea of what people mean when they say information had value.
Yeah.
You know, credit cards, it's very easy for anyone to understand, okay, this has value. When you're in the entertainment industry and you're sitting there and somebody asks you, so what do you want to protect? What are your crown jewels? You're not always going to think about that email you wrote 3 years ago. You're going to be thinking, oh, well, I want my expensive camera protected. I want, you know, the account numbers where I get my money. Like, we are just still in the point where people are just realizing almost any piece of data, any piece of information that you might have can somehow, some way be monetized, whether it's like Netflix being held ransom. And I gotta say, props, I give Netflix props, as you did, on holding fast and saying, go ahead, we'll go ahead and release it early too, because not everyone's gonna do that. Yeah. And it's just a matter of, I think, companies realizing we don't have that old model of this is valuable, this is not. It's always going to be valuable to someone.
Yep. So, moving. Wow, there is no segue in the this next topic, so we're just gonna ignore the segue possibilities, and we're gonna talk about ransomware real quick.
No, there is. Netflix was held for ransom. They're just segue.
Really, really, you know. Actually, before we get to that, because that reminds me of a really. So random connections between stories like this, we get pitched this stuff all the time. This comes to our email. And there, we see some horrific stuff. So let me tell you a funny story about an email pitch I got today.
Uh-oh.
First of all, it's related to a topic that we don't even cover, and it's a product pitch. So that's something else that we would never do. And the pitch started off with, "Dear Steve, I see you like to write about technology." And they're starting to pitch me this cloud app that goes onto my phone that will, wait for it, help me manage my CD collection, as in compact discs.
We're back in 1994.
Right? And I had to imagine myself. I'm like, does anybody still buy those?
I do, actually. But
where? I don't even have a record store. I think there's
Amazon.
might be...
Amazon sells everything.
Oh.
Is that a product pitch? I don't know.
See, the funny thing is on Amazon, even then, when I went there, I used to just get the MP3s, and then you've got Apple and Tidal and things like this. So, yeah, the whole CD thing just melted my head. It was like, where's the connection here? You see, I like to write about technology. Well, that's kind of generic, but now you're talking about compact discs, and I'm like, let me get my Sony Walkman out. Maybe we can make this happen. I don't know. So yeah, that was the random pitch of the day. I still like the ones that start off Dear First Name, but
yeah.
So
well, at least you get Steve. I mean, half the time I get emails saying Dear Gary. I have no idea who Gary is, but I get so many of his pictures. I just wish I knew who it was. I could forward it to him.
So the thing is, it's not Dear Steve. It literally says Dear First Name. It's first name, and you know,
Mailmerd gone bad.
Yeah, Mailmerd. That usually happens around RSA, and it's very funny because you'll see Dear First Name, Company X would like to invite you to show on date, and you get these. I'm telling you, it's hysterical. Yeah. We'll actually do a segment on bad pitches one day because it's amusing. So, ransomware. Not too long ago, actually the last time I was in this studio, I infected 2 laptops with Locky because I was bored and they gave me things to play with and said, destroy them. Well, they didn't say destroy them, but I destroyed them anyway. And we made a nice little life lesson out of it. And so we made a couple videos about what a Locky ransomware infection looks like from start to finish. And then I also did a video on how to recover from a ransomware infection. Really fun stuff. Chris and I spent 7.5 hours in this studio, and we were about to kill each other before time ran out because it was a very long, painful day. But overall,
that's how ransomware is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a long, painful day.
Long, painful day. But overall, there was a lot of good that came out of it. So now, Locky died off not too long after that video series was, shot. And then it kind of made a resurgence. So I got this interesting thing from AppRiver the other day. They told me that on Monday, so within the last 24 hours, they had seen 23 million Locky-related messages. 23 million. I mean, that's just smashed, like just spike like you would not believe. And when I look at the types of subject, so they saw 23 million on Monday, but I'm thinking this campaign's been running because for the last couple of weeks I've been getting the emails similar to what what AppRiver is reporting here. They're, please print this message, here are some documents attached, open this, and they're all zip files and everything like that, photos, images, what have you. And then Barracuda came out yesterday and said that within the last 24 hours, they've observed about 20 million attempts at ransomware attacks through email attachments talking about payments. But the interesting thing is the attachment they're looking at here, it's a 7-zip file.
Oh, interesting.
So it's
how many people even use 7-zip?
Exactly. So
I guess Windows automatically unzips them now, but still.
Really? I didn't know that.
I think Windows 10 can handle them.
Huh. So I don't know. I guess the reason for bringing all this up and talking about it is ransomware is still a very valid threat risk. And here recently, Risk IQ, along with IDG, did an interesting survey where they talked about when they talked to decision makers and business leaders, and they essentially asked them what makes you cry, what keeps you up at night, what are you worried about? And a lot of them had no to modest confidence levels when it talked about reducing their attack surface. And when it came to the threats that impacted them the most, malware, ransomware, browsers, and lockers came in at 44%. It was like the number one thing. After that is phishing, web and social engineering attacks. Then you got domain infringement and DNS exposure, scams, disingenuous ads, brand abuse, and defacements. And I thought it was really interesting. 35% said brand abuse and defacements. When was the last time, Famita, you heard someone worried about having their website defaced?
I can't, like you said defacement, and I'm thinking Syrian Electronic Army. Wasn't that like 3 years ago?
Yeah, if that. I mean, script kiddies do defacements. Right. When was the last time you actually seen, like, I don't even think Anonymous has done like a legit defacement in years, not since like back in the anti-sec days.
Exactly.
So I was really, but the ransomware being the number one thing, I think ransomware scares more administrators now than actual researchers or malware experts, because there is a serious deficiency in their security posture and they know it. And they know that ransomware would just wreak havoc on their network.
And I mean, it goes a lot with what you and I have been talking about. Like, ransomware actually highlight the gap between basic IT practices and security. I mean, in a way, if you have backup, ransomware shouldn't be as scary. It's still terrible, it's still a pain, but it shouldn't be as frightening. Yep. But the fact that it is just goes right back to, okay, let's look at IT. What is going on with your backup? What's going on with your disaster recovery? And that's a huge hole that I guess we just haven't noticed or thought about.
I think it's been noticed and thought about, but nobody harps on it because it's just not sexy. There is no joy in worrying about backups. And the thing is, you know, a lot of time we say, well, ransomware can be fixed if you have the proper backups. Proper backups means you have backups that weren't attached. In the video that I made with Joan, what we did was we infected a laptop, and I had backups attached to this laptop, and they got affected too.
Yeah.
And I did that on purpose. I wanted to show that your backups, you need to have backups of your backups, and they need to be off site. You can't.
Exactly. Like, and I know, like, even with the backup, if you have your, say, OneDrive or Dropbox mounted on your laptop, that gets infected. So again, it's like that entire layer of where do you kind of cut it off so that it's floating out there? And that's a tricky thing to do.
It's very tricky, and it's also headache inducing. And again, it's not sexy, so nobody wants to think about it. And I think that's a lot of our problem is, you know, we're so, and I say we as like the general public, we see security as this flashy, like, you know, Midnight Rider type thing, when in reality it's, you know, if you were to watch a hacker actually hack, it's about 4.5 hours of a guy staring at his computer and then randomly screaming because somebody forgot a curly Q at the end of their code. And this is what hacking is. It's not, you know, tappity, 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 I'm in. No, there's no celebration. You don't see some guy jumping for joy because, you know, their little browser worked or anything like that. I guess my question for you is on the ransomware front, do you think it's going to get worse, or do you think it's going to go away again?
How about it's going to get to the point where it's prevalent? Where, I mean, right now, ransomware is very much a category everyone is focused on. Oh, my goodness. And a couple of years ago, that's what we were with Trojan. That's where we were with keyloggers. And now that's all lumped into malware. I think right now ransomware is scary, and it still had that new kid on the block vibe that, oh, hey, look out what's going on. But eventually, yes, I know.
Are you saying ransomware is hanging tough? Is that where you're going with that? Were you going to do that right there? Was that?
I was thinking more if you got the right stuff, but anyway.
Oh, so what you can't see is these two are behind the monitors over there. And they're looking at me like, what are you guys talking about? Those are New Kids on the Block song, fellas. They were recorded before you were born. It's okay.
Wait, what is this?
Yeah, see?
What is this?
I intentionally put that reference in, too.
Get off my lawn, the both of you. So
But, I mean, my basic thing is eventually, I don't know if I'll call it worse. It's just going to get to the point where ransomware is going to become a normal, I hate that again, just it's going to be yet another malware. It's going to be like a Trojan. It's going to be like a keylogger. It's probably going to be bundled with 5 different things in one cocktail. So it's just going to become more prevalent.
So you know what I think is going to happen? And I'm almost hesitant to say this because if nobody...
Don't give ideas.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's a thing that goes against, what are your assets? Where are your assets? Who has access to your assets? And what are you doing to protect them? Because I think ransomware is going to go from generic, let's encrypt the entire disk, to I'm just going to take your financial database. That's all I want. Thank you for leaving.
So you think it's going to be more targeted?
Yeah, and it'll go after payroll, it'll go after HR, it'll go after, very focused segments of the company, and it'll know the file types for like now that I'm thinking of it, I can't think of the name of the software, but you use it for your payroll if you're like a small
Quicken?
Yeah, Quicken. It'll go after Quicken databases and other things like this, and that's the only thing it targets.
One day kids are going to be able to say ransomware ate my homework.
Yeah, literally, because it'll go after, you get the doc file ransomware and all of a sudden, you have to handwrite your assignment and most kids are going to be like, how do I get the keyboard to show up on this? That's a notepad. Right. But where's the keyboard? There is no keyboard. And they're just going to keep, getting really confused because we'll be in our wheelchairs and rockers at the time going, back in my day, we had to use chisels. we hammered out our homework assignments. So that's actually, I think, where we're going to wrap up. What have you seen this morning since we're rarely get to talk to each other live? What have you seen this morning while you were looking at the news that stood out to you?
Well, I mean, right now it's all about the Instagram hack and how people are suddenly talking about APIs. And I'm saying, thank you, finally. Just the fact that every single product, every single software is now a platform, and we're saying, hey, you can connect to me, you can use my data and I'll share it with you, and no authentication. What's that? Now people are suddenly like, that is a terrible idea.
Yes, so very much so.
My rant for today.
So we'll actually discuss API hacks in an upcoming episode because that is a relevant topic for a lot of us, and it's going to affect a lot of you, whether you know it or not. But that's been today's episode of Salted Hash. Thanks a lot for hanging out with us. I really appreciate it. For Famita Rashid, my name is Steve Reagan with CSO Online. We look forward to seeing you next time. Stay tuned. We'll see you soon.